All right, so this week I want to welcome everybody back. We do know that Karen Hirschleb and Kate Higgins are both away today, so they will not be joining us. But I think that once we iron out the very last of our computer problems, we expect to have 10 people with us this afternoon. Today, as we indicated at the last meeting, we will be using both GoToMeeting and Skype. And I do want to mention that we've made a change from GoToTraining to GoToMeeting, and it really just has to do with the licensing. We were maintaining two licenses for virtually the same product, and after doing a quick analysis, we decided to keep GoToMeeting and to not continue using GoToTraining. So again, I apologize for the slight glitches we had in getting everyone logged in today, but it should be a lot smoother next time. And of course, some of you will have figured out ways around the problem if you do encounter the problem again where it won't log you into the meeting directly. We are going to be using Skype for part of our meeting today. So again, I'm hoping that all of you have a second Skype-enabled device, whether it's an iPhone, another laptop, or an iPad, something that you have Skype installed on. I also want to be certain that all of you have seen the email that I sent you earlier this morning, which provided a list of everyone's Skype addresses as well as copies of their research questions. Today, I'm going to be assigning Skype pairings, but in the future, we may pair people in different ways, including giving you the choice of people to connect with who may have similar research questions to your own. So today, we will have Stephanie and Julia will be a pair, Barbara and Nilu will be a pair, Jane and Mary will be a pair, Charlene and Richard will be a pair, and Denise and Amanda will be a pair because Karen and Kate are not with us today. So before we get started, I just wanted to see if anyone had any questions. And today, next slide, we're going to be actually using a slightly different system for questions. So we no longer, you'll notice that there's no longer a raise your hand function up in the menu bar. Instead, what we would like you to do, if you would like to raise your hand or ask a question or make a comment, is simply type an asterisk into the text message box, and it'll come up with your name and the asterisk, and that's how we will know to call on you. So again, before we get started with today's session, does anyone have any questions about session 1 or about session 2 or the interviews that we did as part of session 2? Okay, we're going to keep moving on then. And again, please feel free to stop us and ask questions at any time by simply typing an asterisk into the box, and we will know to call on you. Again, just so you know, we have turned off your webcams and your microphones, and so using the chat box is the only way that you can communicate with us to alert us that you have something to say, or if you're experiencing any ongoing technical difficulties. In today's session, we are looking at the question, what teaching materials and methods will I research and use in my research lesson? And in preparation for today, there were 2 learning logs you worked on. Learning log 3.1 asked you to begin to think about the instructional methods and materials that you might use in your research lesson. And again, based on the research question that you developed and discussed with me as part of session 2. Learning log 3.2 is a little bit different in that it asked you to pick one of those instructional methods or materials and to use this rather structured approach to reviewing it using a set of criteria that were listed on the learning log sheet. One of the reasons that we have included that is one of the fundamental aspects of lesson study is the selection of instructional methods and materials that are research-based and evidence-informed. And that means generally that those materials have been developed by people who have tested them, and in some cases they may have published research based on the testing of those methods. In other cases, they may have published information in professional journals talking about the piloting of those materials. But in all cases, generally, those materials have been pretty well thought out. And part of the reason for reviewing them is just for you to actually understand what the designers had in mind when they were designing those in order to kind of better help you pick the thing that fits what you're trying to do the best. And so today, to get us started, again, I have a couple of short Adobe Voice, Adobe Spark videos. The first one kind of introduces and reviews the content that was in the reading and the learning logs that you did in preparation for today.
Hello, and welcome to the third of 8 sessions designed to help you build the knowledge, understanding, and skills you'll need to engage in lesson study. I'm Ben Wren, the head of the Center for Inspiring Minds. In this video, we will be suggesting activities and processes you may use to identify and review instructional methods and materials you think you might use in your research lesson. And we will briefly discuss how to find relevant academic literature related to your research lesson. As we discussed in the first 2 sessions, lesson study is a professional practice improvement process focusing on self-directed professional growth. It builds teachers' professional knowledge of their subject matter and effective pedagogies and teaching strategies based on the unique needs of learners. Lesson study provides a unique opportunity to try out teaching strategies or innovations that have been effective in similar settings, and to collect data about students' learning experiences. Narrowing the focus of the lesson study is the first challenge. This task is made easier by first developing a focused research question. In the last session, we introduced the research question prompt. How will, the action you will take, with the target group, improve the learner outcomes? It's important to note that a good research question cannot be answered with a simple yes or no answer, but is open to a range of outcomes and explanations. Many lesson study planners begin by thinking about the instructional method that will be used. This may be a familiar teaching method, an original adaptation of a familiar teaching method, or something the teacher is trying for the first time. Regardless of the level of familiarity, what is important is that the instructional method has been researched by others, and the evidence available suggests that it should be effective in your setting. Understanding whether a certain instructional method is evidence-informed will likely require research. In Japanese lesson study, this research phase is known as Kyoji Kenkyu. Some schools in the US and the UK focus on reviewing and identifying strategic teaching resources and materials using criteria-based rubrics. Other schools maintain that evidence from the published literature is needed to inform the selection of effective methods and strategies. When it comes to finding and using relevant academic literature, we suggest that you consider using online databases like ERIC and Google Scholar. Both of these have features that allow you to focus your search and will include a range of free resources. ERIC is a service of the Institute of Education Sciences based in the United States. It is a specialist education literature search database that can be accessed for free. Google Scholar is a Google product used by students and teachers. It also can be accessed for free. Both database systems offer free, easy-to-follow online tutorials. It is important to remember that when you are researching the academic literature, you should look for evidence that both supports and challenges your thinking. In some education settings, you will have access to a technical coach or a highly experienced educator who can help you identify possible instructional strategies and teaching resources and help guide your research activities. In Japan, this person is called a koshi. The koshi is typically a master teacher or content expert, sometimes from another school or a nearby higher education institution. In most US or UK schools, this person is often a subject or grade level leader or a divisional administrator with years of experience. Special consideration should be given to finding a person with specialist knowledge and experience with the specific learner need you will be addressing. This person may be someone in your division, on your campus, or at one of the other ACS International schools, or someone outside the school. The koshi is involved with the lesson study group throughout the process, and this will likely involve a significant time commitment. Remember that your lesson study research question is just that, a question, and that learning what does not work is as important as learning what does. The identification of possible effective instructional strategies and materials, and an understanding of the academic literature around the lesson study topic are essential preparation for developing an effective research lesson plan. In the next session, we will be discussing methods for identifying and reviewing relevant student data to help refine the instructional methods and materials selection process. Thank you for your interest in lesson study.
Microphone back on. Oh, okay, everybody. So that was just a very quick recap of the content that was included in the preparatory reading as well as in the learning logs. Does anyone have any questions at this point about any of those topics or any of the content that was covered there? If you do, again, if you can just type an asterisk into the chat box, and we will know that you are that you would like to say something. Okay, I don't see anything in the chat box. And so what I'm going to do is I'm now going to show you another very, very quick video. And this video is probably going to be presenting information that you're quite familiar with. But I thought that it was important to remind ourselves about how some of this other work that we've been looking at our school around evidence-informed instructional methods, how it relates to lesson study. Lesson study is a really great opportunity to begin to connect a lot of the pieces that we've been looking at and exploring in other parts of our school practices. So again, this is just a short video on evidence-informed instructional methods.
This short video has been developed to explain a bit more about what we mean by evidence-based instructional methods. The identification of evidence-based instructional methods and materials is an important part of the lesson study planning process. There are a range of terms used to describe the theory and practice of teaching. These include teaching method, teaching strategy, instructional method, instructional strategy, and pedagogy, among others. We will be using the term instructional method in this lesson study course. Evidence-based is a descriptor used to identify those instructional methods that have been researched. Some of these instructional methods have also been examined using meta-analysis techniques, suggesting that they are consistently effective in a range of settings. In the last decade, the work of researchers like John Hattie and Robert Marzano have become widely recognized in schools. Both have developed lists of research-based high-yield instructional methods. Perhaps best known are 9 high-yield strategies, first proposed by Marzano, Pickering, and Pollack in 2001. Let's take a quick look at these. The first of these is setting objectives and providing feedback. Setting objectives is the process of establishing a direction to guide learning. Providing feedback is an ongoing process in which teachers communicate information to students to help them better understand what they are to learn, what high-quality performance looks like, and what changes are necessary to improve their learning. The second high-yield instructional method is reinforcing effort and providing recognition. Reinforcing effort is a process that involves explicitly teaching students about the relationship between effort and achievement, and acknowledging students' efforts when they work hard to achieve. Providing recognition is the process of acknowledging students' attainment of specific goals. The third high-yield instructional method is cooperative learning. Cooperative learning provides opportunities for students to interact in ways that enhance and deepen learning. It provides an environment in which students can reflect upon their newly acquired knowledge, process what they are learning by talking and actively listening to their peers, and develop a common understanding about various topics. The fourth research-based instructional method is cues, questions, and advance organizers. Cues are hints to students about the content of an upcoming lesson. Cues reinforce information that students already know and provide some new information on the topic. Questions allow students to access previously learned information on a topic and assess what they do not already know. Advance organizers help students use their background knowledge to learn new information. Advance organizers are stories, pictures, and other introductory materials that set the stage for learning. They are introduced before a lesson to draw attention to important points, identify relationships within the material, and relate material to students' prior knowledge. The fifth research-based instructional method involves the use of non-linguistic representations. Visual refers to graphic organizers, pictures, or illustrations used to depict or map concepts or processes. Auditory refers to non-linguistic sound recordings or sound making, possibly used to express ideas symbolically or in the form of a metaphor. Kinesthetic refers to model making, manipulatives, or movement. The sixth is summarizing and note-taking. Summarizing is the process of distilling information down to the most salient points to aid in understanding, memorizing, and learning the relevant material. Note-taking refers to the process of capturing key ideas through writing, drawing, or audio recording for later access. Both help students deepen their understanding of information because these strategies involve higher order thinking skills. Students must analyze information at a deep level as they decide which information to keep, which to delete, and which to replace with more general terms. The seventh is assigning home learning and providing practice. Home learning refers to opportunities for students to learn or review content and skills outside of the regular school day. It can also be used as an opportunity to connect background knowledge to an upcoming unit by providing advanced organizers, such as engaging students in making observations, watching videos, initiating conversations, and completing reading assignments. Practice is the art of repeating a specific skill or reviewing small amounts of information to increase recall, speed, and accuracy. This strategy refers to the need to devote time to reviewing what students have already learned so that it becomes immediately accessible for cognitive use. The eighth research-based instructional method is identifying similarities and differences. Comparing is the process of identifying similarities between or among things. Contrasting refers to the process of identifying differences. Finally, the ninth high-yield instructional method is generating and testing hypotheses. This can involve applying knowledge by using two thinking processes that can be used alone or in tandem with each other. It can involve using general rules to make a prediction about a future event or action. It may also involve making inferences that are based on knowledge that students already have or information that is presented to them. These and other general instructional methods can be used across a range of subjects and in transdisciplinary learning. There are also many subject-specific adaptations of these instructional methods that are related to subjects' unique knowledge, understanding, skills, and dispositions. We encourage you to consider these instructional methods and to actively seek out other research-based instructional methods as you plan your research lessons.
So next slide. All right, everybody, welcome back from that. And again, I hope that that's provided kind of a quick view or summary of what you already knew about evidence-informed instructional methods. We are going to now switch over to some paired discussions, and there are a number of people who are continue to experience difficult logging on. Some of whom actually logged on but have since lost their connection. And so I'm afraid that I'm going to need to shuffle around the pairings a little bit based on the people who I know can hear us right now. And so I'm going to ask that Stephanie and Julia, that you remain a pair, but that Nilu, if you will pair with Richard instead of Barbara. Barbara and Charlene have lost their connection and not certain how to get them reconnected. So Nilu and Richard, Jane and Mary, Denise and Amanda. All right, in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to switch over to your device, but let me show you what I would like you to discuss first. So on the next slide, the discussion is really about your responses on Learning Log 3.1. And I'd like you to focus on 4 questions. What is your research question? What standards or learner outcomes are involved? What teaching methods or materials do you think you're going to review? And the what else do you need to know question. For the paired discussion, we are going to give you 15 minutes, and we will show you a slide when there is about 2 minutes left, and we will call you all back at the end of the 15 minutes. So please don't turn off the audio on your GoToMeeting so that we can call you back when the time has passed. Again, just to repeat those pairings because we have had to change them a little bit. Stephanie and Julia, Denise and Amanda, Nilu, Richard, and Jane and Mary. Okay, again, if you have any questions about it, please do type in the chat box and we will try to address your questions. But if you would please go ahead now and connect using your Skype to your discussion partner.
Hey everyone, welcome back.
At this point, we actually want to hear a little bit about what she talked about. And so what we would like you to do is, if you're willing to share what you talked about in your paired discussion, can you please place an asterisk in the chat box? And you can respond to one question, to two questions, to all the questions. You decide which of the questions you actually want to respond to. But again, please let us know what you talked about by typing an asterisk into the chat box and we will open your microphone. Nilu, thank you. We're just about to open your microphone.
Okay, Neil, I think you might have to unmute yourself. Okay, that's it. Great. Thanks. Okay, go ahead, Nilu.
We were just talking about the research question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So we just refined a question looking at the learning outcome. And so my research question is, how will students of IB Year 1 biology develop scientific reasoning?
Right.
Hello?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to connect
Hello?
to Mary now in just a moment.
I've got the
Oh. Okay, Mary, do you want to unmute your microphone? Okay, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
All right, thank you. We discussed several different aspects to design for learning, particularly ones that are based on the cognitive science of learning ability and how mind maps and reflection can help develop students' appreciation of planning and developing their own learning.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to Amanda next.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Amanda, if you'd like to unmute your microphone. Okay, go ahead.
So it was actually quite exciting to just have the opportunity to even get started on this and talking to Denise, because she's already going to send me an article that she found in her research or has in the past that will relate to my question. So one thing we did discuss though is it feels difficult for me at least to identify sort of, I don't know, as I'm doing this research, there's so many opportunities for using different instructional methods. I'm having a hard time thinking like what would be the research lesson, because I see it as like a series of lots of different lessons. So I don't know if you have any feedback as far as that goes.
Amanda, you're absolutely right that lesson study isn't a one-off piece. It actually typically is a whole series of lessons. And that series may involve using a similar instructional method several times, or it may involve using different instructional methods each time that you do a research lesson. So the fact that, based on a research question, you are really finding it challenging to narrow in on one single instructional method, that's really why lesson study is so valuable, because it doesn't make you choose that one piece. You can now choose 3 of them, test each of those in a research lesson, and understand the relative kind of merits of each of those instructional methods for the learners that you're working with. So yeah, great that you've kind of discovered that as soon as you start asking questions about selecting an instructional method, you quickly realize that that there are several choices that may give you a positive result. And again, part of the research lesson is to test those. Thank you. Does anyone else want to share anything from their discussion? All right, we're going to move on then to Learning Log 3.2. So if you want to pull that out or pull it up, however you have recorded it and saved it, in just a moment, we are going to ask you to rejoin your pair and to discuss 3 new questions based on Learning Log 3.2. So first of all, what did you review? Did you review an instructional method? Did you review an instructional material? What did you learn about that method or material by using this particular rubric? And a more general question about why, from your perspective, it is important to engage in this critical review at this stage of planning your research lesson. So at a stage way before you actually are delivering the lesson, to begin to look very, very critically at the methods or the materials that you think you might use. For this discussion, we are going to give you 10 minutes. Again, we will change the screen when there are 2 minutes remaining. And afterward, we are going to ask you again to share some of the things that you talked about. We're going to do it in a slightly different way. We're going to do it in a round robin, so everyone is going to have a chance to contribute to the discussion. Again, if you would discuss these 3 questions based on your responses to Learning Log 3.2, you have 10 minutes. Go ahead and get started. If you have any questions during your discussion, please type them into the chat box. Thank you. All right, everybody, welcome back. I just want to take a couple minutes now to hear about what you talked about in your pair groups. And we're going to do this a little bit differently this time. Last time I just asked for people to volunteer. This time we're going to go through kind of a round robin. And if you would like to say something, we will open your microphone and you can respond to the question. If you don't have anything to contribute right now, just say that you'd like us to pass to the next person. And so again, the 3 questions that you were talking about, what did you review? What did you learn about the method or material? And this bigger question about why engage in critical review. So we're going to start with the first question. What did you review? And I'm going to call on Stephanie and then Barbara and then Jane. We'll open your microphones one at a time. If you have something you'd like to share with us, share. If you'd like to pass, just let us know that you'd like to pass. So Stephanie, we're opening your microphone right now. If you could
unmute yourself, please. Okay, Stephanie, okay. Go ahead, Stephanie.
All right. Hi, sorry that I was late. Julia and I had a great conversation, and we talked a lot about her project. She's a lot farther along than I am. Ben, as you know, we just met yesterday, and Barbara and Charlene and I are just kind of getting into it. Yep. But Julia had some interesting feedback about how the steps she's taken, and then I was able to offer a couple of suggestions. So it was nice. It was a good professional exchange.
Good.
Great. And Barbara is still experiencing some computer problems. She was not able to, I guess she is, she's passed those. So we're going to go to Jane. And Jane, we are unmuting your microphone. So again, if you can open your microphone.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Jane.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi. Mary and I had an interesting conversation about the sort of models that we've been looking at, and 3 in particular. I was looking at the UDL planning framework, obviously, and which is the Universal Design for Learning. And Mary was telling me about the solar taxonomy and the Webb's model that you were discussing with her as well, and how it all relates back to the cognitive sciences behind how students learn. And the question is just what? Yes. Okay. So that's as far as we went with that then.
Great. Thank you very much, Jane. Yeah, when we call on you, if you'd like to respond to any of those 3 questions, that's fine. We're going to move on to the next question, is that what did you learn about the method or material, if that in fact is something that you discussed? And we're going to call on Charlene and then Amanda and then Richard. And I'm not certain if Charlene is able to connect. She has a very interesting, she's made a connection through FaceTime to the presentation that Barbara has on her computer because they're having some computer challenges in Doha. So let's go to Amanda first. We'll open Amanda's microphone because I know Amanda has a functioning microphone. So Amanda, just tell us what you talked about, or if you'd like to respond to this particular question.
Sure. I was researching in particular some of the visible thinking routines that that might be helpful applied specifically to book club. And so one that I hadn't heard of before was layers, and it's actually specific to text and looking at text from different perspectives. So it was interesting to narrow it down to just one very small visible thinking routine and look at it from all of those different criteria lenses.
That's great. Thank you for that, Amanda. I think that as we go along, I'm hoping that I actually manage to do a pairing where I have you paired with some of the teachers from Doha, either Stephanie or Barbara or Charlene, because they're doing some interesting, their research question is about developing kind of a passion for writing using a whole series of different writing techniques that they use. And I think that there could be some interesting overlap with the visible thinking exercises from Project Zero. So thank you for that. We're going to go now to Richard. Richard, we are just unmuting your microphone if you want. There you go. Richard, hi.
Hi, yeah.
Go ahead, Richard, we can hear you.
You're asking what do we learn?
Yes.
Or what did you talk about, or what did you discuss?
Hello?
Any of those.
Well, because both of us are interested in flipped classroom, and we're talking about what we'd call a response lesson, where students respond to what they're supposed to have prepared at home. And we both thought that collaborative discussion groups are the favourite option, probably, because it means that everybody then has to show that they've done the preparation they're supposed to have done. And by challenging students then to identify and justify the key points, that should engage them in higher order thinking, analysing, evaluating what they've been reading about. And it also involves a differentiation if you choose the collaborative groups carefully.
Great, Richard. Thank you very much. We're going to switch over to our last group of people and our last question. And I don't know if you would have had, if you got to this question in your discussion, but this was kind of a bigger question about the importance in engaging critical review. From some of the other course participants, they've been talking about some of the instructional methods that they are familiar with, that they know are backed up by research evidence, or some of the methods they looked at that they know are backed up by research methods. And again, lesson study is about using evidence-informed approaches in research lessons and assessing the learning outcomes that come from those. And so again, this question, the importance of this kind of critical review of those instructional methods and resources, is a really key one. And again, if you'd like to respond to this question, that's fine. If you'd like to tell us more generally what you talked about with your partner, that's fine as well. We're going to start with Denise, and then we're going to go to Mary, and then Nilu, and then finish with Julia. So Denise, go ahead, please.
Denise. Yeah.
Hello?
Hi, Denise.
Hi, sorry. Amanda and I talked briefly about this, but I think it was throughout the whole conversation as well. We pointed out to the importance of having this checklist. It was a great way of seeing, in reality, you could spend hours trying to find evidence-based research out there about lessons, and it would be wonderful if somebody could create an app or a website where this was already done and you could just type in the type of subject area you teach and figure out, the lessons that have that research-based outcome already linked to student learning success. But I think what is so important, though, is that even though it's time, it's a lot of time to prepare for it and to research it properly, but obviously it's well worth it. You want to make sure that all those listed criteria are text so that you ensure that it goes well with students. And we talked a bit about how obviously even if you deliver the same lesson and you've done the critical review, you know that it's a good lesson, you probably talk to others about it, and you deliver, let's say, to 4 different groups, there's always going to be differences in the way, you know, the group relates to it or how the outcome of the lesson happens, but at least you're doing as best you can as a teacher to figure out if there's a good foundation for the lesson itself or for the instructional method or material. But it was a great conversation, and it's one of those things that you could spend hours doing and talking about. So I'm going to stop there.
Great. Denise, thank you very much for that. One of the important points that you brought up that was mentioned in the video, and maybe just to emphasize the point, that in some places where lesson study is practiced, they have made the conscious decision that instead of requiring the instructional methods or the materials to actually be research-based, that instead they are applying these criteria-based rubrics to the selection process. And you probably noticed that in the rubric that only one of the criteria was there published research evidence showing the efficacy of, you know, the method or the material that you were looking at. And so schools have relaxed this idea of using only things that have been rigorously researched as instructional methods or materials in lesson study, but recognizing when they're using things that have not gone through that rigorous review process. So Denise, thank you so much for those comments. We're going to go to Mary now.
Mary, if you can unmute your microphone, please. Okay, thank you.
Hi.
Hi, Mary.
Hi. The critical review process we discussed in quite a little bit of detail, actually, and the main reason being that both of us are investigating stages of the design process here. So the project I've intended to take on, I did some sort of approach on a similar topic a little while ago. And in that sense, I've come through the process of collecting lots of different lines of inquiry and lots of different methods and assessing what might be best and put some of them into a little bit of practice. Whereas Jane was explaining that she is at the point now where she is collecting all options for designing her study, and in some sense feels a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of different pathways she can take to achieve her outcome. The benefit of putting all of this into a critical review is really one of those final stages of narrowing down that process, so that the best approach for the student group that are the target for the study is assessed well in light of data and in light of other findings, and that the teacher who is conducting the study is aware of the benefits and disadvantages to those perhaps that they didn't choose to use in the end, and can then relate that result back to a greater body of information than just the studies in support of the task they choose. So I would think engaging in a critical review at this point will help to narrow down that sense of feeling perhaps a bit overwhelmed by the options, or narrow down the most appropriate option in a group for the student body that are targeted within a study.
Mary, thank you very much for that. One of the other things that tends to happen at this stage is that as you begin to narrow down the options for the instructional methods and materials, that sometimes it actually draws your research question into question. And it's at this point that people may go back and actually modify their research question based on some of the instructional strategies that have emerged as the most promising for that thing that they're trying to achieve. So Mary, thank you very much for that. We're going to go to Nilu next.
Okay, Nilu.
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. We were discussing among ourselves and went into discussing certain strategies like cooperative learning and collaborative learning. What's the difference into it? Had a big discussions on it, because we find they're both pretty overlapping. That's one thing. And excuse me. And the question, like, why do we engage in a critical review? Richard and me were discussing that this is necessary because it actually draws attention and as well as helps the student to focus on a certain topics. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Sure. Okay. And it also motivates very high order critical thinking among the students on the learner side. And there could be a strategy involved here when you're doing to engage the students is to have a brief question and answer sessions. And that brings good discussions in the group, and it's a very powerful tool for encouraging students to learn. And me and Richard were also thinking having students involved in learning process, or why it's critical also because it also gives them face-to-face learning. And yeah, so we were looking into our own project or research, what we want to do, and how do we want to incorporate these strategies into it.
Great, Mary. Thank you very much for that. And Mary, again, one of the important things, I'm sorry, Nilu, one of the important things that you reminded us of there is that a very important part of this critical review is not just understanding which of these approaches are backed by evidence, but also which of these approaches are most appropriate for our learners. Which of the approaches are they going to enjoy the most? Which are going to engage them in the most active way? So thank you again for reminding us about the importance of considering the learners when we're selecting these approaches. Finally, we're going to go to Julia this afternoon.
Julia, if you could unmute your microphone, please. Thank you.
Hi, as I said in the chat thing, I think the previous people have covered everything really, and so I don't really have anything to add.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you very
Julia,
much.
thank you. We've just noticed your message just as you started speaking, so thank you very much for that. As a final thing, I just wondered today if you had any questions as we get ready to close session 3. Again, if you have a question, if you could type an asterisk into the chat box and we will open your microphone. Okay, don't see anyone indicating that they have a question. Again, please keep in mind that as we go, as you kind of work over the course of the week and you begin working with the materials for session 4, that anytime you have a question, please email us and we'll be happy to answer by email, to Skype with you briefly. Oh, we have a question from Nilu. So Nilu, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I was because the last week it was our October break and got some time to read about it, about the lesson study and where we are going. It was really helpful. Is it possible for you to send us some articles related to this, but that will help us to read about them rather searching on internet? Yeah. Like specific articles if you have.
No, certainly. With each of the sessions that we do, I'll send you some small reading assignments to go with it. But if you'd like, I'd be happy to post kind of a bigger set of resources. As you probably have guessed, I looked at loads and loads of materials as I prepared for the course, and I'm happy to kind of post those up on a shared site.
Yeah.
So I'll post those up and we'll send around a link so that people can access it.
Yeah, we'll probably share them with you on Dropbox, I think.
Okay, fantastic. That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So again, as we close this session, I just want to remind you that as an option, you could use Learning Log 3.3 to just record any of your learning points from this session. Watch for the session 4 materials. We will put them out tomorrow morning in an email, so you should have them quite early. Also watch for your invitation to join session 4 to the GoToMeeting. And please, again, accept the invitation as soon as you get it. If you notice that you get any strange messages that don't look quite right, if you could notify us right away.
Sorry, and with GoToMeeting, you don't have to do anything. You just need to make sure you save that link. It's not like GoToTraining where you have to register. So going forward, we will continue to use GoToMeeting. And for those of you that had problems today, I'm happy to do test meetings with you prior to next week's session. So please let me know if you'd like to do that.
If you did encounter any difficulties today, we are going to open the meeting at 3:15 our time next week, about 15 minutes before we start. So again, if you experience difficulties today, please log on a little bit early and we can help you with any luck to resolve them and to get connected easily. I also want to remind our Doha participants that our time changes soon, and that next week when we meet, we will have a 3-hour time difference, meaning that you will be joining us at 6:30 p.m. your time. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I apologize for the glitches we had in getting started. We still have ended on time, so thank you again very much. I do see also the Doha is off on holiday next week, so again, if anyone is traveling and they can't join us, you will be able to see the session as a recording. Please do the session 4 work, because each week builds on the week before, and it is kind of a progressive piece that way. So again, if you can't join us next week because you're traveling, please do session 4 and watch for the session 5 materials. Thank you all again very much, and contact us in between the sessions if you have any questions. If not, we will see you online next week.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.